Hello.
It's me.
So behind me you'll see the current BBC TV advert playing for the BBC. And its title is, What Has the BBC Ever Done For Me? Quite obviously a skit, or rather a play on this skit in the Monty Python movie The Life of Brian, where the People's Friends of Judea and the People's Judean Friends get together and debate, what have the Romans ever done for us? And so let's ask that question personally, and maybe you can ask it too of yourself. What has the BBC ever done for me? Well, previously at least, a lot. I bet you didn't see that coming, did you? So what do I mean by that? Well, in my childhood, the BBC gave me hours, days, weeks, months, years of entertainment. It gave me stories of daring do, adventure, of happiness, of sadness. In many ways, those stories, as they were meant to do, teach us the difference between right and wrong, what is moral and immoral, what is good and what is bad. It gave me fantastical stories that I still remember today, from TV shows that have a place in my heart. It's that important. And then the BBC was also known for its impartiality, its ability to break news, to be there where others wouldn't go, and report the news, however unpalatable, from some of the darkest flashpoints on the planet. The British Broadcasting Company grew to be a colossus, a British institution, one that drew a very British line in the sand, that said very clearly over the years, if you're standing on the other side of this line to the BBC, then you're not on the right side of history. And that's what the BBC became. It became something we could rely on. And then, unfortunately, the scandals happened. The wheels started falling off, and the BBC became mired over the decades in more and more wrongdoing. And to make matters worse, there never appeared to be any real statements of contrition and remorse. Remember, we call the BBC here in the UK Auntie, because it was a part of our lives. It was in our homes. It became part of the family. And yet, the BBC wasn't at all what it appeared to be. As I said, it became a colossal, a huge British institution. And as such, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the various secret intelligence services here in the UK would want a part of that, to steer the narrative, as we call it here in the modern day, to make sure the British people were on the straight and narrow, but not in a natural sense, not by highlighting good and evil, but by giving them subtle messages which left them in no doubt that this was what was required of a British citizen in the modern era. British politics, likewise, has also been captured and drawn into this web of deceit. And if one takes 2 minutes to look at the narrative surrounding the BBC and the news that it's broadcasting, along with the messages that are coming out of politics and the military-industrial complex here in the UK, it's not difficult to make the connections that the system has been tidily sewn up. As these scandals started to come one after another, and we found out about the victims, that's something that really just my brain couldn't shake off. I kept thinking over and over again, what about the victims? What about the victims? And yet the BBC does what it did best. Released cold, heartless, clipped statements. The kind of statements that come from a large corporation. Not the kind of statements that would come from your auntie. And so we are where we are. The BBC, on the one hand, playing mercilessly on our ties to it, playing mercilessly on the fact that it is still, to many people like myself, still auntie. All in an endeavour to keep its fat, bloated body on life support. Yep. What about the victims? What about the darkness that appears to be now hard-baked into the centre of the BBC? And this brings me neatly to the advert playing behind us, What are we to make of all the celebrities that appear in this advert? Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that any one of them is a bad person, or that any one of them is attached to anything nefarious. However, when we look at the way people have been treated by the BBC as an organisation that don't follow its preferred narrative, one can only come to the conclusion that from the bottom to the top, there must be state assets placed within the organisation at all kinds of levels and on our TV screens. And it occurs to me that as these celebrities appear in this very confident and glossy advert, do any of them have a sentence that rattles round inside their head that just won't quit, reminding them of their moral responsibility to the victims? I wonder. I watch one show on the BBC. I pay my BBC licence, and so I'm part of the problem. And I won't stop paying my TV licence because I do watch one show a year on the BBC, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of the law. However, I'm on the wrong side of my own morality, and one would say at this point logically and rightfully, well, if you feel this strongly about it, you should stop paying your TV licence. But it's not that simple. I have a series of mental health issues that I've been dealing with for quite some time now, and I don't feel in a position where I can confidently combat the forces that the BBC release upon you when you stop paying your TV licence. Yes, I'm one of those people who is effectively, I suppose, afraid of not paying their TV licence. And trust me, that's a hard thing to admit. But I feel slightly comforted by the fact that I'm not alone. But as I've said in previous videos, it's something that I battle with constantly. And who knows, maybe I'll find a spark of braveness. But until then, I'm part of the problem. Added to this is the baggage that I carry with me emotionally from the BBC. There's still a very tiny, tiny part of me that wants to love the BBC for what it did for me as a child and what it represented to me up until my early adulthood. But the BBC now is an absolute shit show, and I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship. And adverts like this don't help because they relight a spark of something that I recognise from the past. As I reflect on my predicament regarding the BBC and all the emotional turmoil that I go through on a daily basis, especially every year when I get my email telling me I've repaid my licence, which frankly doesn't help my mental health condition at all, it puts me in a difficult position because I've come to realise that the BBC is a curse on the British people. It lies and actively gaslights, and it's not a free press. The BBC has turned into a money-grabbing bully with the state on its side. And this, surely for any right-thinking person, and for many people who no longer pay their TV licences, who've been brave enough to stop those payments, is an intolerable position. And yet, look at this advert. Take a moment to breathe it in. All these celebrities, who I'm sure are good people, asking you, the people, who don't have half as much as anyone on screen here, to take notice and ask yourself, what has the BBC done for you? And here we have the problem. We're back at square one, where I started this video. What did the BBC do for me? And my own personal baggage around this broadcaster who has successfully infiltrated every moment of our lives for decades. But make no mistake, this advert isn't the shiny, shiny, confident thing it would have you believe. This is desperate. This is desperation. It's an attempt by the BBC to remain relevant and fiscally buoyant. The various outside interests that have successfully infiltrated the BBC over many, many years now rely on it for their narratives. And if you ask yourself prosaically, why is the BBC licence a thing anymore? There are only a few answers that fit, and state propaganda is high on that list. There's an old saying that goes something like, the only thing required for evil to flourish is that good men do nothing. But it appears as though that's not the full story, because evil and badness don't just require good men to do nothing for it to flourish. It also requires cheerleaders. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like, subscribe and share. It really would help the channel. And until next time, bye bye.